Hey, this is Nicolosi, and in this video, I'd like to showcase some of the new features introduced in Mela 6.7. I have Logic Pro running on macOS with Mela inserted as an instrument, and I've created a custom preset for this demo. First lane is a MIDI processor chain with some of the modules currently bypassed, but I'll bring them back as needed. Second lane is a free running LFO. Third lane is an instrument where it takes MIDI input uh, and then we have a stack of oscillators here, and its output is going through this filter, and its cutoff frequency is modulated using this LFO, followed by an amp envelope, and then its output is routed to the last lane, which is an audio effects lane with digital delay with ping pong settings, and followed by a clipper module. Okay, let's discuss the node stack module. The node stack module generalizes the mono module. In fact, it replaces it. It can do what mono module could and much more. What the mono module allowed you to do is to emulate monophonic synth behavior. So if I bypass this and I have MIDI to poly set to one voice, what happens is every time I play a new voice, the old voice, every time I play a new note, old note gets released because it can only play one note. But if I release the last note and other notes are still being held, it doesn't matter, they get ignored. Let me show you what I mean. So let me play a C major chord. So it only played the last note, and as soon as I release the last note, it doesn't play C or E here, even though they're still held. So with the monophonic behavior, so node stack with its default values emulates monophonic synth behavior. So I'll do the same and see what happens. And also watch these two displays. This is called a play stack, and this is called a wait stack. So as you can see, G3 is currently being played, and these two notes are waiting. As soon as I release G, E is brought back, and as soon as I release E, C is brought back. So, and that's how monophonic synthesizers behave. So play parameter sets a number of notes that notes that are allowed to be played at the same time, and the wait parameter enables or disables the wait stack. So if I disable wait, we will get the same behavior as before, as if node stack was bypassed. Assuming MIDI to poly set to one voice. So now what the node stack allows you to do is you can set the number of notes that are allowed to be played at the same time to be more than one. So let's set it to 2, and I'll set MIDI to poly 2 here as well. So we can get like similar behavior with polyphonic synth. So now we'll have 2 notes that will be heard at the same time. So let me play the C major chord again. So you could see there were like 2 notes were being played and 1 note was waiting some of the time. And what happens is that, so when the new note comes in, the oldest one is being released. So as you saw, C was released. Let's do it again. So C was released because it was last note. But we can change this behavior, and because the currently release parameter is set to old, so that means it releases the oldest note. So we can change this behavior and say select high. And what this will do is it will always replace the highest note. And say I want C3 note to be always playing, and then I'll play other notes on top of it. So watch what happens as I play C major chord, and then I'll add some more notes as well. So C3 note kept playing, and only the top note was being replaced. So I was using only two notes to to demonstrate this behavior, but obviously you can set it to high values, and uh, and not just that, you could modulate this parameter. So there's a reason why there's a zero as well, because during modulation you might want to have sometimes uh, no, you might want to release all notes, and well, it won't release, it won't necessarily release them, it will just move them to wait stack, and they will be brought back depending on the modulation of this parameter. So you can use note stack module not only for monophonic synths, but with the polyphonic synthesizers. So you can in fact have a Mela as a MIDI processor chain and use it with other synths and get this behavior, because most synthesizers don't have this behavior by default. And as I said, you can use a note stack creatively in your MIDI processor chains by automating play parameter. You can also automate wait parameter, and you will get really interesting results. Okay, let's discuss the note pulse module. You will notice it has a new parameter called mode, and when mode is set to loop, the module behaves as before. And what it does is that it plays this note. You set a note here at regular intervals, and the intervals is defined using this sync value. And we will hear the note. It will generate this note at regular intervals when the host transport starts, and it will stop as soon as the transport stops. Okay, so but now it has new modes, once and hold. What once does is that it will play note once when the when transport starts. So as you can see, it only played that note once. And there is also another mode. Well, let me explain why that mode is useful. Here, I have a LFO, and I have set it to retrig mode, and because it receives no other. Let's ignore this for a second. Because it doesn't receive MIDI input, we can assume it's a free running LFO. But if we want, maybe you want your synths to always sound the same when your song restarts. So you can insert note pulse in front of it and set it to once mode. That means when the transport starts, it will generate a note only once, and it will retrigger the LFO. So what will happen here, as soon as I restart the transport. So you see it restarted the waveform from 0 phase, but we can set it to say 90. And so what will happen is that every time the song starts, it will restart from 90 degrees phase. Okay, so and this becomes especially useful if you have multiple modulators and you want them all to be synchronized when a song starts. Okay, so there is another mode called hold mode, and what this does is that it plays a note when transport starts, and it won't release it until transport stops. So let's try that. So it kept playing the same note until I released, until I stopped transport. And this is useful if you want to start, if you want to start your automatically start your arpeggiators or Euclid sequencers. So here I have a Euclid sequencer, and Euclid doesn't generate sound unless it receives a MIDI note as input. So, so I have a note pulse in front of it in hold mode, and now we should hear the, once I start transport, we should hear this Euclid pattern. And as soon as I stop transport, Euclid also stops generating MIDI notes. Okay, so that's what's new with Note Pulse. Okay, let's discuss the Note Range module. As you can see, it has a more compact look, and well, let's quickly review what it does. So in filter mode, it will filter out all the notes that doesn't fall in this range. So the range is defined by lowest and highest parameter. So in this case, lowest is C3 and C4. So if I play any note between these two notes, they will play. We hear them, but as soon as I play notes outside of this range, they get filtered out. And don't forget, you can invert this as well. So, and when inverting, what happens is that it will no longer play notes in between them, and they will be played outside of that. So let's go back to C3 and C4 range, C3 to C4 range, and transpose mode, what it does is that if the note is outside this range, it will be transposed into this range. You can watch the note stack to see what note it's played. So if I play, say, E3, E2, it will turn into a C3. Sorry, E3. And same goes here. If I play E4, it will play E3. Okay, so that's transpose range. And there is a new clamp mode now. What clamp mode will do is the notes that are played outside of this range will be clamped. So any note that's below C3 will turn into C3. Anything is between will pass through, and anything above C4 will be clamped to C4. And obviously you can invert it if you need to. And this is especially useful in cases where you want all MIDI notes to be converted to one specific note. So if I set this to C3, now any note you play will turn into C3. And obviously you can set to anything else you want. Okay, let's discuss parameter presets. You've probably used the offset parameter, which appears next to sync parameter in a lot of Mela modules, and it lets you adjust timing. And the way it does that is that it multiplies, it's a multiplier to the sync value. So if you wanted to get a dotted behavior, right, you can set this to 150%, or you could just select it from the menu here. And this corresponds to 150. So if I actually type 150, it will display dotted. And you'll notice when dot is selected, there's a check mark next to it. And if I select triplet, it will appear here. And triplet corresponds to 2/3, or about 66.7%. And this idea has been, and then also you may remember that with other parameters, it used to say here, for example, used to say set to -6 dB and set to +6 dB. But now these behave the same way as the offset parameter triplet dotted. And so if I select +6 dB, now there's a check mark here. I can do the same with -6 dB, or I can just type 6 and it will automatically select that. So these are called parameter presets. And a lot of parameters have these useful values. Here's a chance parameter, and instead of saying 33.3 and 66.7%, it has 1/3 and 2/3, which are more intuitive values, and they appear here instead of percentage values. And that looks much nicer. Also, frequency parameters often had like 262 Hertz as one of the options here. So now instead it says C3. And so if I select this, and I can Let's go back to C3. It will, it's actually exact C3 note frequency, but because Mela displays parameters with 3 significant figures, it just rounded to 262. And you'll notice that in this case, it's not displaying C3, instead it's showing the frequency, because I think it looks better with the frequency parameters to always display frequency. But for the offset parameter, I feel it's much more important to indicate that you're in a triplet or dotted mode. And same goes with the chance parameter. It's much nicer to see 1 in 3 chances or 2 out of 3. So yeah, so that's parameter presets. Okay, let's discuss parameter values. This is a feature I'm most excited about. I wanted to have this feature for a long time, and it took a while to implement it, and it's finally here. So let's take an LFO, and obviously you can set its frequency, its rate in terms of hertz. I can just type 1.5 and no problem. But sometimes you want to think in terms of seconds. So, and you want to say, I want the LFO cycle to be 2 seconds. It's not a problem. You can just enter 2 followed by unit. S, for short, you can type seconds as well, but S is easier, 2 seconds, and it will automatically convert to hertz. You can also enter value using milliseconds. So I can type, say, 350 milliseconds, and it will automatically convert it to hertz. You can do the same to delay times. Instead of thinking delay times in terms of length, you can think in terms of frequency. So you can set this to say 1 hertz. And now you have a 1 second delay, or you can say, I don't know, 2.5 hertz. It's quite simple. Same goes with the cutoff frequency. Say you want to set the cutoff frequency in terms of milliseconds. You can just type 10 milliseconds, and that corresponds to 100 hertz. Okay, so you can do even more. You can specify time in terms of beats. So I can type 1 beat here, and it will use the host tempo to convert it, and it's 2 hertz. So if I change this to, if I change tempo to, say, 135, right? And then I do the same. I type 1 beat. Right? So it uses that value to do the conversion. Now, what you will now you noticed I typed a small b, and that means beat. You can also type capital B, and that will correspond to 1 bar. And you can also obviously type a fractional value like 1.3 beat, like that. Additionally, you can type the fractional values like 2/1, which corresponds to 2 bars. And you can even specify triplet or dotted amount by typing T or D. Okay, so finally, there is also, finally, you can also enter frequencies by specifying, by entering the note name. So recall C3 sets it to 262 hertz, but maybe I want to set it to G5. It's not a problem. I can just type G5. I can also type in flats and sharps. So maybe I want C sharp, and then corresponding to octave 0. I can also do a flat by entering lowercase b. So let's say A flat 4. So parameters that take frequencies will also accept MIDI note names as values, and Mela will automatically do the conversion for you. Okay, that's all for now. Like and share if you found this useful. And if you have any follow-up questions, or if you want me to discuss any specific features in more detail, Let me know in the comments. See you next time.